But what I thought would be good is that we still start with, and we'll maybe start with Ben today, is that why horses was the question yesterday. And I also asked, they've all got really solid family support that have taken them through their careers in very different ways. And, taken them through their careers in very different ways. And I think it would be good for you to hear that. So we'll start with that.
So, hello. There we go. So for me, I think it's, the question is, where does it all start? Why horses? I think it would have actually been more spectacular if I ended up not doing horses with my family. I've grown up with such amazing role models in my father and in my grandfather, and that's where it all really begins. So my grandfather is 97 now. He was pulled out of school at the age of 12 to work with horses on the land during the Second World War. And sort of through that is where I got a lot of the inspiration that I needed for my training with horses. Yeah? Better with horses than technology, very clearly. So yeah, my obviously with the horses, any horse that was worth its salt was pulling guns or supply wagons, and so what was left were not brilliant. And my grandfather learnt a lot about how to get horses that weren't perfect to do what needed to be done, because of course they weren't getting a bow for Instagram; they were feeding the country, and sort of that's where I got my inspiration for a lot of problem solving, if you like, or I like to think of every horse as a riddle. And that comes from my grandfather, and as well my passion for driving horses. And then growing up with my father, who he started out as they were dairy farmers in Arable, and then my wonderful mother, who is, and I'm very sorry, I have to say a bad word here, she was a townie. Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. But actually, that was the magic of her coming from a different lifestyle, because growing up, my father and grandfather, they did dairy farming and arable, and my father hated both milking and sitting in tractors. But of course, anybody who knows anything about farming knows that the idea of changing the purpose of the farm is sacrilege. And it was only my mother who was saying, why just change your job? It'll be fine. You could just do horses instead. And Dad was already a show jumper, and he was never John Whittaker, but he was doing well enough that people were asking him for riding lessons. And so it transferred from a dairy farm into a riding school. And then one day a group of people came and they did English Civil War battle reenactments, and they asked if they could have some riding lessons. And then they said, we've been let down for horses. Is there any chance that we could hire the riding school horses to come to battle? And of course, being Yorkshire and wanting to make some money, the 410 and the 12 bore came out of the gun cabinet, and we made flags out of silage wrap and drums out of old milk churns, and the horses were trained and sent to war. And they did so brilliantly that a chap came up at the end of the battle and said to Dad, I'd love to hire those horses to do exactly what they've done here on a film set. And thus a business was born. So I grew up in such a strange horse world, where for a normal person, they would think, I can get myself to jump a crosspole because, my friend Sally can jump a crosspole, and that's scary, but it means that I know I can do it. I grew up in this bizarre world where I had 6-foot jacked stuntmen on horses walking around the yard all the time, and I was used to horses being laid down or rearing up on film sets, and so it really was this encouragement to go for it. Then when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I saw the great Lorenzo. For anybody who doesn't know, Lorenzo, French guy, stands on the white horses. Jean-Francois Pignon, French guy, on the floor with the white horses. Of course, Lorenzo having white horses, at the time I had 2 white show jumping ponies, and children's logic, that was all I needed. Obviously, that was the trick. So stood on the ponies, got going doing that, did my first show on them when I was 9 years old, and then apprenticed under a Cossack called Guido Louis, from the age of 13 to 16 to learn the Cossack stuff, and then started my own performance team. And that's really where, at that age, up until then, a lot of what I'd done had been focused on stunts, on getting horses bomb-proof and maybe pulling a rear or a lay down, but humans doing crazy things. And then as I got older, I wanted more and more to fall into the magic of horse training. And that's what opened the doors for Liberty and what I do now.
Super. Yeah.
So luckily, well, yesterday I was lucky and I went first with this story. So I didn't feel intimidated by the fact that I didn't canter around on the back of 2 white ponies. I did once manage to stand on my 10-2 roan called Kelly, but it didn't end well. So no, I mean, I have 2 older sisters. They're 7 and 9 years older than me, and they both had ponies before I was even born. So I think I was probably on a pony when I was still in my mum's tummy and plonked on a pony very shortly afterwards. And I got my first pony when I was 4, aforementioned 10-2 strawberry roan called Kelly. And we were best friends that did everything together. And I was a super geeky, keen pony clubber. I lived in Scotland until I was 6 and then moved down here and did everything pony club-wise. Dressage, show jumped, evented, quiz team, like absolute boss to the quiz team. Completely horrendous at mounted games, could never vault on, never mind stand on 2 ponies. So never did mounted games. But, you know, I had incredible support all the way through my sort of early career from my family. Pony Club was a really big part of what I did, and I had a very cool pony called Max who I evented, and for a short period of time wanted to be the next kind of, you know, Ginny Leng, Ian Stark. They were the people on my bedroom wall when I was little. But then actually I discovered that I was really not brave enough to do that. And Max also didn't like big fences all that much, but was quite good at prancing around a little bit fancy. So I started more down the dressage route when I had him probably at sort of 13, 14 years old. And then very successfully stole my eldest sister, Hannah. She had a super Highland Cross Connemara. No, not Connemara. Highland Cross Thoroughbred he was. 15-2 called Fred. And he'd been a pony club horse for her. And I stole him and did junior things on him. And he took me to my first European Championships, which was pretty amazing for a Highland Cross Thoroughbred, even in that day and age. And yeah, I continued doing that kind of stuff for some time and actually left school at the age of 16, which was for my family quite a big thing. I came from a relatively academic family. You know, my dad had been to Oxford, both my elder sisters had been to university. Hannah had gone and done a degree in art. She was amazing, gave all of that up to come home and play ponies. So she'd already started doing that. So I was really lucky that I was so supported by my family when I left school, because it really was all I ever wanted to do. I think probably for about 5 minutes I considered veterinary. But again, yeah, probably not clever enough, and also would have loved the nice, good stuff, not so good with the less good side of it. So yeah, and Hannah and I set up the business and, you know, developed it over a long period of time. Have had many horses along the way that have helped make me into what I am now. I think every horse that you ride teaches you something. So all of them have been such an important part of the journey. But for sure, my family have been a massive part of it. And I think, you know, without them, I definitely wouldn't be doing this in the way that I'm doing it. But yeah, horses just because it was all I ever wanted to do, and family, massive, massive help.
Got to turn the microphone on. You know, for me, why horses? So I grew up on a farm, and you know, when we come home from school, that's what we did. We rode our horses, and so didn't spend a lot of time in town playing team sports, that sort of thing. You know, basically get home all the time with our horses. And I guess if you do something for long enough, you get better than the average person at it. And so I wasn't, like at school, I wasn't very athletic at all. You know, when they we're going to play rugby, we're going to play soccer or whatever, and they pick 2 captains, and then those captains pick kids out of the thing. I was always one of the one of the last kids to be picked. So I wasn't a remarkable child in many ways, but it seemed like for me the horses was something that I don't know if I was good at, but I didn't suck at it like everything else. So that might be, that might be what drew me to the horses earlier on. And, my parents were very supportive. I've got two brothers, and we all showed horses as kids, and like summer holidays, we'd go to horse shows. That was what we did as a family. And so, we lived on a farm, didn't own the farm. Dad worked on the farm, and part of his employment on the farm gave us a house and the ability to have our horses in the paddock there and whatever. So we didn't have much in the way of money, but, my parents did what they could to get us to horse shows, and, that kind of led me, I guess, on the path I'm on now. We showed in like quarter horse shows and stuff, and they used to have this thing called the Youth World Cup team, which is there'd be a team from Australia, a team from the UK, a team from Germany, France, Italy, Canada, America, maybe New Zealand. And when I was a kid, I really wanted to be on that. That's really wanted to go to America. And the year I was trying out for it, it was in America. I really wanted to go, and went to the qualifying show and won everything at the qualifying show. I'm like, I'm a dead cert to be on this team, but I wasn't picked on the team. And looking back now, it's because my parents couldn't afford to send me, and they weren't going to pay for it. You know what I mean? The association was going to pay for it. But I always had a desire to want to go to America and learn more about it. Initially, I worked in a bank, and I worked in a bank for 7 years, and they at the time would give you what they would call 12 months leave without pay. So you could take a year off, not get paid, but be guaranteed a job when you come back. And so I took that opportunity and went to America. But, the question, why horses, I think it was in my destiny without necessarily being in the forefront of my mind. Like I said, initially I think horses was the one place I could be one of the cool kids,